My name is Jens Mörike from Germany, from Berlin, from SIBB. It's the IT Association in Berlin and Brandenburg. Yeah, sorry for my appearance. My camera is for some reason just in the second not working instead of, let's say, just 3 minutes away or ago. Anyway, the content is on the vocals. So to say it brief, the SIBB IT Association in Berlin is an association with around 260 members. We are supporting all IT, also digital ideas around, and try to bring industry and IT together. I mean, solution providers and all different branches of, yeah, let's say, healthcare industry, logistic, what else? You can say everything except military. And we provide over 11 core topics. And nowadays, we figure out that this really interesting and nice thema, low code, no code, is just in the shade. And we want to bring it to light, to bring it to more people, to let's say, bring appearance in the world. And last year we developed the Low Code Day. That was the first congress in Europe, as far as I know, where you can find solution providers from one full day. The idea starts in May, and we had over 200 members in September. So I think it was a success, and success for this topic too. So we want to go on with the systems. Unfortunately, we couldn't do the Low Code Day 2 in this year, so we decided we do something different and bring a network to life, a network where all people who are interested in low code, no code can bring together and do digital appearance, like now in the webinars. We do the Low Code Day 2 hopefully in 2021. And with strong and nice communities, as with Thinkwise and many other, we bring these nice solutions, hopefully, in the companies of industry and health systems. So we had a really successful solution week. We are now in the fourth solution day. Tomorrow is the last. Who is interested in this can still apply for the other webinars. And now I am curious what we can see about Thinkwise and how they modernize really systems and bring it to your business. So thank you for Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Marke, for your introduction. I'll also introduce myself for a minute. And first of all, well, we're doing this in English because I'm from the Netherlands and my German, I do understand it, but it's not that good. So that wouldn't help you very much. So apologies, but it is in English. My name is Mark van den Berg. I have a background in software development, and I used to do a lot with our low-code platform. I built a lot of solutions for our customers, primarily in the Netherlands, but also in other countries as well. Well, you're not here for me for the solution and the story, so I won't bother you with all of the things, but I have a pretty technical background, and I grew towards marketing and strategy about Thinkwise, and I'm trying to grow the company worldwide, and that's part of my job. But I give a lot of demos and presentations about the company on a day-to-day basis. So if you have any questions, and in this session, you're capable of doing that using the Q&A. If you look in Zoom, there's a button called Q&A, questions and answer. You can type in your questions. I will try to answer them straight away by just talking. Sometimes I may not have time for that, or whatever. That may cause us to do it by the end of the presentation. But please use the Q&A. That makes also the session a lot more interesting and interactive. If not, that's also fine. I hope you will enjoy it. So the agenda you've probably seen before you joined the session. I prepared primarily a slide deck for today with a lot of interesting information. I'm basically going to tell you a story about low code. And of course, I don't know you. I don't know how much you know about low code. So I'm going to start with a little bit of the history of IT and why low code is important and why it should matter to you. Thinkwise is a vendor of a low code platform too. And of course, we'll explain a little bit on how that's positioned and what you can use it for. Also share with you some success stories from customers of ours. I have a short video, about 4 minutes, that will help you understand a little bit better what the platform looks like, because obviously today we don't have time for a big demo, but at least I can show you a short video. And for the people that are slightly more technical, we will dive into the architecture for maybe 10 minutes or so to help you understand what do you need to build to build a low-code portfolio, and also how can you build these core systems with Thinkwise. And finally, also depending on the time a little bit, we will spend some time on the future of low-code, specifically how we will be interpreting that. And well, with that being said, let's start. So if we start with the software industry as a whole, we've been building software for maybe 50 years, since the 1970s, 80s, 90s. It became more popular, of course, to build solutions, programming it. And the questions that I really would like to address in this first slide is how mature, so how complete and how sophisticated is the software industry? Because a lot of people consider the software industry extremely high-tech. And well, there are a lot of high-tech industries like automotive industry, where we build cars, or aerospace industry. Those industries are very high-tech. They're also around for maybe 100 or 150 years. But what we very often see is that software isn't really that high-tech, because you need people, and they're going to write millions of lines of code, sometimes 100,000, sometimes a million, sometimes even more. And normally, if you ask someone if someone is going to do manual labor, we would call that a craftsman, not really a high-tech industry. So I think that's a very interesting observation, because a lot of people consider software development a very high-tech industry. But basically, we're just writing lines of code, and we're surprised that it doesn't work if we make a mistake in it. So I would say, well, it's not that high-tech yet. And if you look at these high-tech industries, for example, the automotive industry, I was in Wolfsburg with the Volkswagen factory maybe 10 years ago already. What I saw there is truly high-tech. I mean, we're 3D modeling these cars with computer-aided design, CAD, and we're also building them with computer-aided manufacturing. I mean, there are robots that build the software. There are some people around to guide the robots and help them for specific situations. But generally speaking, they're building a model of a car, a 3D model. They can test it with these wind tunnel tests. They can virtually crash these cars to see how strong they are. And what comes out of it, once they build it with these robots, is of a super high quality, and nobody is surprised because they tested everything. So this is a truly high-tech industry, because they're not building these cars by hand or in any shape or form. They're modeling it, they're testing it, they're validating it, and then they're building it also automatically. So if we look at IT, that's not very high-tech, especially if you compare it with these industries like the automotive industry. And another problem that we see is that whatever you build in these hundreds of thousands of lines of code, that is the software itself. So if you build something in the 90s, I was only a kid back then, you built it maybe for Microsoft Windows 95 or maybe even older. That solution that didn't last. It became outdated, and you would have to rebuild it if you wanted to move it to a web application. And if you wanted to go from a web application to a mobile app, you would have to build it. Every time you go to a new programming language, you completely throw away your solution and you build something new. So in summary, we are a software industry. We're doing a lot of manual labor. And every time we go to a new technology, we have to do it again. We make a lot of mistakes in it, a lot of bugs, a lot of testing, a lot of money. And another problem is that the resources are very hard to find. So that's the vision of Thinkwise in the current situation of the software development market. So why is that a problem? Well, the problem is software means a lot to a lot of businesses. I mean, 20 years ago, you could probably do without a lot of sophisticated software, but nowadays it's really a catalyst, a driver of business. So there's this hype word called digital transformation. I like it a lot, but it's also like a container word, and you can, well, a lot of industries have different meanings with it. But just take the usual examples like Uber, like Airbnb, but also maybe Industry 4.0. A lot of industries are disrupted by new technology, by companies that don't even own cars, by hotel companies that don't even own hotels. With the COVID-19 crisis, if you were a retail company, you don't have e-commerce, you're in big trouble. So software is a catalyst to drive business, but also you need to be extremely flexible at changing your software, because you could be disrupted in 1 year if a new player comes around the corner. So how do you resolve this problem? Well, there are different solutions for that. And one way of resolving this problem that I just described is offshoring it. You're basically letting other people in cheaper countries with cheaper resources build these millions of lines of code. It's still the same craftsmanship. It's not high tech in any way, but we have cheaper people basically because of cultural and economical differences. Another way of resolving it is the agile scrum. So you could build software, make it more flexible by making the process more flexible, by making smaller projects, being more flexible with how you involve the business. That's one way of doing that. But we feel that the next step of resolving this problem is automating building of software, which is something that has been done in the automotive industry, in aerospace, in many other industries. We automate all these actions, and I think the IT industry is still too young. It's not completely mature in that sense. So model-driven is timeless. We've done it a lot. We do it with cars, we do it with skyscrapers, with bridges, with airplanes, but we don't do it with software yet. Well, we do now, and it's called low code, but I'll get back to that in a minute. And what it does is automating the building of code, and it prevents legacy software. So it makes sure that the software doesn't get outdated and you don't have to rebuild it every time. And this is something where you can also involve the business people, because historically, IT was building the software, was giving it to the end users, and they wanted some changes. It was very tough. In this case, with low code, you can involve the business when they're building the software in these models, in these 3D models basically, and getting them involved from a very early start. So what we see is that the software industry is rapidly adapting this way of technology. On the one hand side, we see companies that create low-code platforms, such as Thinkwise, OutSystems, Mendix, BettyBlocks, all kinds of companies that build these platforms. There are already over 250 low-code platforms worldwide. And you need very technical, skilled programmers and computer engineers to build these platforms. They are extremely complex to build. On the other hand, you have all the companies that build solutions, that build applications using these low-code platforms. That's not so complicated. You need business information specialists. You may even need citizen developers, so the people that are working in the business and they build the apps themselves using the low-code platforms. So there's clearly a division going on, separating the industry between companies that build the platforms and the people that use the platforms. So what does that look like? This is an image from Gartner, one of the leading research firms in the world. And you see an application landscape, and they've said, well, let's divide that into 3 different categories. We have systems of record. These are big core systems, like SAP, like Microsoft Dynamics, like Infor. Maybe you have something industry specific. These are core systems that are very hard to change. It's very hard to build in your unique processes. And that is why you see a lot of customization in these products, which is usually a big problem by itself. But you also see a lot of applications around it that cover the differentiating unique processes. So if you have unique processes, they don't fit in your core application, your ERP system, for example, you're going to need a lot of applications around it to support your business. On top of that, there are systems of innovation. And these systems of innovation are small apps that you build because you want to innovate something. But these are small apps. They may change. You might get rid of them in a few months or a few years if you have something more, even better. And a lot of organizations are stuck with a lot of Excel, Access, Lotus Notes, all these small side applications around it. And it's completely normal. If I go to a certain company, doesn't matter in what country, also in Germany, They have SAP, but they also have 500 applications around it, all connected with interfaces, and that's completely normal. Well, low code and no code are there to replace these side applications and get rid of these 500 apps, and by replacing it with something more professional. And I'll get back to that in a minute. But there is a third strategy, and that's called low-code core systems. And there are vendors like Uniface, like Progress, like Oracle has some platforms, and also Thinkwise that are built to replace the core systems and the customization around it. And if your core system is low code, you don't need these 500 applications around it because it's flexible enough to encompass your unique processes. So there are three types of code of low-code platforms. There's no-code platforms that don't contain any code at all. Normally, they're used by business people to build normally very simple apps. Sometimes they still need to code, but let's assume they're very simple. You can build all kinds of small practical solutions. It's more professional than Excel for sure. You can easily experiment with it, and they can also very easily be replaced in 3 months or in 1 year when you have something better. They're not pixel perfect, doesn't need to be because it's experimental. They have connectors that connect to the core systems and sometimes also send information back to core systems. So it can be complex because some organizations already built 1,000 no-code apps by their business people, and nobody knows who's responsible for maintenance, and well, also nobody knows how to govern that. Then there's the low-code platforms. The low-code platforms are more sophisticated, but also usually used by professional software developers. But they work together with the business to come up with apps that have slightly more possibilities than, for example, no-code platforms. So you still build all these side apps, you connect them to your ERP system or another core system. They are more sophisticated, they can live for a few years. They're usually pixel perfect, they look very good. They have a lot of connectors. You can still have the problem with the growth, that it's very hard to maintain 1,000 low-code apps, but even 20 low-code apps can already be quite complex. Well, there are some issues with it, but let's skip through that. And low-code for core systems is basically also something done by professional software developers joined by the business. We can build extremely complex and large-scale applications with thousands of screens, business rules, decisions, processes. That's all completely normal with these platforms. It also demands that you think about, how do I want to do my business as a business leader? You're not going to buy a standard package and then just adapt your business to the package, but you're going to define how you want to do your business. And because low code is extremely flexible, you can basically build the software exactly as you need it, but a lot faster than with custom software. So these applications can have a lifespan of several decades. They can live for 10, 20, 30 years because they're completely model driven and they're big, and you don't want to rebuild them every time because that would cost a lot of time. They're also not always pixel perfect, but they are concept perfect. So every screen has a uniform look and feel. Everybody knows how it works. It's very intuitive, but you're not going to paint every single screen, for example. It has an extremely high productivity, but it's also necessary because these are very large systems. Well, it supports, of course, working in teams, etc. One last option is that there are also possibilities to modernize existing core systems. So if you already have a large application that's already outdated, there are possibilities to move to one of these low-code platforms. So why does it matter? Well, first of all, we're automating software, and this is kind of, Gardner says, it's a natural evolution in application development. And what does that mean? 70% of large enterprise companies will be using at least 4 of these low-code development platforms for different purposes. And as you can see, there are multiple different kinds of low-code platforms, so it makes sense to have multiple if you're a larger company. And 75% will be using these platforms in the future, but also 65% of all the application development will be done by low-code application development platforms. So this market is growing extremely fast. There are now already over 250 platforms that are completely replacing the manual labor that you would normally have if you build a application with traditional programming languages. Moving on to Thinkwise, Thinkwise is one of these platforms in the category low code for core systems. You may have got that already by now from the title of this session. Already in business for 18 years, with 150 employees, customers in a lot of countries already. More importantly, we have our own Thinkwise low code platform. It's basically a full development studio where you can draw the processes and the models of the application. And it has a deployment center to build applications and deploy them in the cloud or on premise or even both. That doesn't matter. And we guarantee that you can replace every legacy software application within 12 months. And we have customer cases to explain how that's possible. So from a concept perspective, I just give you a story of how business applications are always becoming outdated and we have to rebuild them every time. And that's also part of this slide. So you see timeline from the past to the present to the future. And you build a solution at some point, or you buy a package. And this is an old computer, as you can see, from the 90s probably. So you build something at that moment in time. But that application will start feeling older because there are newer technologies. You're going to want to change your business and your software, and at some point that's not possible anymore. So there's always a moment in time where companies say, well, after 10 years, 20 years, maybe even, I'm going to get rid of the solution and I'm going to rebuild it. And we already discussed how that is always a challenge, but it's also a shame because whatever you're going to build, it's always almost the same application as before, just in the newer technology. And well, it's hard to find the right people. It costs millions if you have a big solution, and it's always, well, always a big operation, big project. So how does it work from a Thinkwise software low-code perspective? Here you can see this model, and this model means a description of how the software should work. So there is the description of what tree should look like. It contains the processes of the company. It contains the business logic. It contains the reports. It contains the data model. That's all part of this model right here, and it's always unique for every single Thinkwise customer. So they all have their own model. Nothing is the same with another customer. But the model isn't software yet. This is basically the 3D model of the car you saw in one of the first slides. It's a nice thing. You can test it, you can validate it, but it's not a car yet. It's just a 3D model of a car. So you need technology. You are very well aware of that because when we started with Thinkwise 18 years ago, Visual Basic 6 was a modern programming language. And we built a user interface in this language, and you can plug it into the model, and then it becomes software automatically. But Visual Basic 6 is becoming outdated, well, already quite a few years ago. So we had to rebuild that in C#. But very importantly, you can switch out these technologies, and I will demonstrate a few more, like the web technologies, like Silverlight you may recognize from like 5 or 8 years ago, HTML5. These technologies will become outdated, but with Thinkwise you never throw away your model. So there's always the 3D model of your software solution that describes the business processes, but you only replace the technology that visualizes the software. So that means that Thinkwise customers never have to rebuild their solution. They can just focus on optimizing their models, changing the processes whenever they want to change the processes, but they never have to worry about the technology. So we've seen some technologies. So Thinkwise software is automatically available on Windows web and mobile devices. If you want it or not, it's always available on these devices. And if you become a member of Thinkwise, you also get all the future technologies. So the latest version that we built is a JavaScript React user interface that I have some screenshots of later. And it completely replaces the Windows web and mobile apps that we had a few years ago. So there's one UI that's completely progressive and responsive, and that shows the model that you've built, and it feels like actual business software to the end user. One last thing, a lot of companies that hear this story say, well, that's nice, but I have this big current software situation. I have an application landscape with a big core system with hundreds of apps around it. So it's nice, but I'm very far away from this idea that you're telling me. That is why we invested in something that we call the UPCYCLE. And the UPCYCLer is capable of deriving a model from legacy software and automatically importing it into Thinkwise. I'll get back to that later in the presentation, but it helps them to make this migration a lot faster to Thinkwise, and then you still have to finish it. It isn't a magic tool or whatever, so it's still going to cost months to completely finish this core application if you want. But we guarantee you can do it within 12 months for your entire business, and then you are completely moved over to this technologically independent solution. So what does that look like in practice? Here you see what the user interface of a Thinkwise application looked like 16 years ago. It was a Visual Basic 6, it has some lists, some forms, you see it's in Dutch because we only had Dutch clients back then. And this was what these applications looked like. But without rebuilding the solution, customers could just move over later on to Java, later on to C#, where I have a screenshot of right here, later on to different UI as well. And we added on mobile devices. So without rebuilding this model, they could just add new technologies and move over to a new UI, new architectures without rebuilding it every time. And it results in a major problem in the IT industry. So in 2016, we changed the look and feel again. And ultimately, we're now in 2020. This is what the applications that are built in the Thinkwise platform look like right now. But again, even customers that started in 2004, they have never rebuilt their solution. They never changed their models. They could always just download the latest version of the user interface and make their applications adapt to new technology without any effort. And we guarantee, again, we guarantee that whatever they have modeled will work in future technologies. So if, I don't know, Google Glass, you know, the glasses, becomes a big thing in 5 years, we guarantee that we build a user interface for that specific device and that your model will work on that. So I think that's a very powerful concept, and it's very similar to how building of cars has evolved over time. So focusing on the upcycler, because this is something that a lot of people ask about, the upcycler allows customers to move over from legacy technologies like Lotus Notes, like Access, like Oracle, or SQL Server applications, doesn't really matter, over to Thinkwise, and it can reuse components and business rules from legacy applications to speed up the migration to a local platform like Thinkwise. So we have different upcyclers for different technologies, and this can literally save you 40% of all the effort of rebuilding everything in the local. It can be extremely powerful. We can't go too deep into it today. We have videos about it, and we can demonstrate it for you. But it's an extremely powerful tool to migrate to the past. So our strategy as a company is to provide the platform, and you can learn this yourself by going online, following the e-learning courses, and you can build your first app within 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. There is documentation that even without a login, if you're watching, you don't have an account, Thinkwise, you don't even know us, and you want to know more about the technical documentation, you can just go to our website and dive into it. There's an online community where people can ask questions, but also raise ideas that people can vote on, and we, of course, take that into consideration when building our roadmap. And we provide 24/7 support, because these core systems, they cannot go offline, right? So if we have customers that want a support contract, service level agreement, we can provide 24/7. So what kind of customers are using this? Well, I consolidated some slides. We have hundreds of customers, but these are some of the bigger ones, like Henry Schein. They are delivering dental equipment, Shell, the oil and gas company, and some others that you can see right here. These are big enterprises that are using Thinkwise for literally extremely important core systems. VDL is one of the examples that I would like to highlight. This is an automotive company. It's coincidence that we're again talking about automotive, but I think it's a very good analogy. VDL builds buses and cars. They have 15,000 employees and over 92 companies, 92 factories that build the parts. They manufacture BMWs, BMWs. They build buses and cars. They have almost 6 billion euros in revenue. It's a really big company, in my opinion. They used Thinkwise to completely rebuild their core system with our low-code platform. And just to give you an idea of the speed, they rebuilt it in 12 months. They used the upcycler, and in 12 months, they completely replaced their old ERP system that was running in an IBM AS400 in RPG. It was programmed in RPG. And they rebuilt it completely on our platform in 12 months. Then they had to implement it, and that cost around 4 to 6 weeks per factory. And they're now live with 41 factories in less than 3 years in total. I think quite exceptional they did this with just 5 employees. They could have done this even faster if they would have put 10 people on it. They did it with 5 people, keep everything at a good speed, and they literally did this in 12 months. So this is a core application, and this is like an ERP system, and then you can see some processes that they are now supporting completely on our platform. There is no SAP anymore. They switched it off. There's no legacy software anymore. There are no spreadsheets anymore. It's just running on it. Maybe you are in a completely different industry. You may be in insurance. You may be in healthcare. I don't know. But just take this a little bit in you. You can see the master data, the shipping, the purchasing, the management, the stock and the warehouse management, all the sales and CRM. It's all part of this application. So their full operation, their full business is supported by this low-code tool, by this low-code platform and the application that they built on it. And many more customers did it in this way. Not only end customers that built it for themselves, but also software vendors like ACTO. ACTO is a software vendor that built an ERP solution for the construction sector. They have hundreds of customers, primarily in Western Europe, with 6,000 users. And they used Thinkwise to modernize this core system themselves. And now they moved over in about 2 years. And then they are now capable of using things like AI and big data on the platform. ANTEA is quite similar. They use Thinkwise to build all kinds of apps for to manage government assets like roads and sewage systems and parks and benches and lantern poles, etc. And they built 15 applications on the platform, and already 100 cities in the Netherlands are using our local platform to do their work for planning and budgeting things. So there are already quite a few enterprises that are using low-code for core systems. As you saw with Gartner, they expect over half of the companies worldwide within the next 4 years to go over to low-code. And I would now like to focus on a short demo video of the platform to give you a short idea of what is in a platform like that. I'm going to start it right now. As well. If you can't, please put it in your Q&A.
Imagine if your core business software was highly adaptable, always up to date, and a perfect fit for your business at any time. With Thinkwise, it's possible. Thinkwise is the only low-code platform designed for developing large-scale applications at breakneck speed. Whether you start from scratch or use it to modernize your legacy systems, software built with the Thinkwise platform automatically adapts to new technologies, so it's always state-of-the-art. Thinkwise makes developing new applications faster and easier at every stage. Effortlessly define your requirements using visual models, and enable your stakeholders to refine these through integrated portals. Manage your work via user stories in several perspectives, which support agile ways of working. A high level of traceability helps you keep track of changes. All this means your business and IT teams can collaborate effectively from one place. Visual modeling reduces the need for laborious coding, giving professional coders the freedom to innovate at unprecedented speed. With Thinkwise, you have full control over huge data models, ready for thousands of users and tens of millions of records. And you can create fully responsive applications with plug-and-play graphical user interfaces. Build screens in minutes and reuse templates to create hundreds more screens without having to paint every single one. Runtime interpretation means changes are instant, so you don't have to recompile or redeploy. Effortlessly guide your users with graphical process flows. And connect to web services, email, AI, and much more. Then automate and schedule tasks for an even smoother user experience. For more complex business rules, adding code is easy too. You can program logic in several languages, add advanced self-locating code, and manage quality with code reviews. The Thinkwise platform fully supports branching and merging models and code, and automatically detects conflicts, so you can easily work on large projects with multiple teams. The platform will also perform thousands of validations to ensure best practice, and provide your regression tests through automated unit and process testing. All this means your new systems will hit the ground running. And you don't even have to start from scratch. The Thinkwise Upcycler allows you to take the DNA from your legacy software and transform it into a solution you'll never have to replace again. This will save you a huge amount of time. Out-of-the-box role-based access control makes it really easy to set user permissions and create web portals for ecosystem partners. Changes in permissions are automatically logged, and the platform's security by design means your new system is watertight. Run your applications in the cloud or on-premise, or both, with a progressive web app for all platforms. With native cloud support, you can scale vertically and horizontally, while our integrated service tier allows you to connect with anything. It's never been this easy to deploy a new system. With Thinkwise, adapting your new core software is rapid, risk-free, and cost-effective, so you can deal with changes, get ahead of the competition, and innovate like never before. Cutting-edge technologies are no longer a part of the future. With Thinkwise, they're right here, right now. As a Thinkwise developer, you'll gain access to our community of low-code professionals and a wealth of information, enabling you to create smarter solutions. Modernize your core systems with Thinkwise, and you'll never have to build them again. Start your free trial today at thinkwisesoftware.com.
All right, I hope that helped a little bit to understand the parts of the platform from a more of a business perspective and the business benefits that it provides. And right now, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the platform, which should take about 5 or 10 minutes tops. This may be too technical for some of you, but after that, we'll get to the future of low code. So hopefully you'll stay around for that as well. And again, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. I mean, I don't see a lot of questions, which is absolutely fine as well. But if you do, I'm here to answer them for you. So what I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper, if you're more technical, then this makes a lot of sense. You have a business application. And this business application always has a database. This database could be of any kind, like SQL Server, Oracle, whatever. There's a logic layer with the code in it, and there are integrations, like an integration hub, which is called an application tier, and there are user interfaces. So these 4 layers are normally what an application consists of. Together with data interface to other applications, this is normally how you build an application. And you spend thousands of lines of code in programming these different layers that interact with each other. And you would normally have done a great job doing that. It just costs a lot of time. But this low-code software platform that we have, it's slightly different. We have something that we call the software factory, where you can build this model. Again, if you're not technical, this is what the 3D model of the car was in the beginning of the presentation. This is where you define the data model. You saw it in the movie. This is where you define your screens. This is where you define your business intelligence and charts and graphs. This is where you define your reports, your business processes, your calculations, and even help text for the end user. It's all modeled right here. You can do it based on specifications, so it has work management, the sprint planning, etc., all in this same software factory. And quite importantly, we talked about automatically testing models. Very similar again to the car. You can automatically test it with digital wind tunnels, with virtual crash tests. You can do the same with your model. You can build a big solution and then run the validator with all its automated tests in it to see the quality of what you built. So you're never surprised about the quality whenever you deploy it. And I think that's a really big difference compared to programming everything by hand. Well, the model is basically the no-code bit. So you don't need any programming to build an application. You just draw a data model, you draw the processes, you draw it in visual models. But once you have that, you can already deploy the application. So you can deploy a database automatically, you can deploy a logic layer, you can start the application by starting user interfaces. But there is also a bit that does require code. So for complex calculations, and we discussed this when we discussed the 3 types of low code, a low code platform for core systems does require code to do complex calculations and decision making. You cannot model everything. You can do that, but then you get a no code platform. And as you've seen from my presentation, you can only build smaller, simple apps with it. But in this case, you can always add code, for example, to make complex decision making, for example, the cost price calculation, an algorithm for AI. That's all completely fine by doing it in so-called code templates. And these are all automatically deployed in a repository. So once we have this, you see that this is green right here. This is the stuff that you still have to build. This is what people from the business, from your IT team have to configure, but you don't build the application anymore because that's done completely automatically. This is the robot that builds the car. So you just define your model and the application is basically generated automatically. It's of an extremely high quality because we have this validator that makes sure that it happens. So you define all the user roles. So you configure your authorization and who should be able to do what. You're capable of recording test cases, so you can automatically play all your test cases to cover the quality of the code templates. So you have the validator to cover the quality of the model and the test cases to cover the quality of the code. And you can apply machine learning on top of that. We will get back to that later. So what you see right here, you never change anything with relation to the business application that you built on the platform, but you always make changes in the software factory to the model or to the code or to the test case. But you never touch the application itself. And any change you make right here is affected immediately in the application. It makes it extremely fast. If you make a change in the screen right here, it's automatically available for all your end users. They just have to press F5 in their browser and it's already effective. And that speeds up things a lot. This is the development side of the platform. But of course, you also need to deploy your applications. We have a separate product for that. It's a Thinkwise solution. And what you can do is take your version of your application, synchronize it with the Intelligent Application Manager. And this is where you can apply the authorization. You can add users and user groups. And this is also where you choose where to deploy it. So you can say, well, I want to deploy my application in the cloud, for example, in Azure, or in Amazon, or in whatever, maybe your own private cloud, or on-premise if you rather have that, or even offline. That's also a final thing. That's what you find right here, and it can deploy it automatically for you, not just from development straight to production, but also separate environments for test environment, an acceptance environment, and then to production. So you can create these deployment packages. You can really have this continuous deployment sequence. You can set it up in our platform so that it automatically deploys new versions whenever you have made a change. So you can define group policies right here, and it also has a personal user profile of the end user. And the end user can log into the application. He can personalize his own application. And for example, if he created his own chart or his own filters in the screens, it's all stored automatically in the user profiles. And one last thing in here is that from an application management perspective, you can automatically log everything end users are doing if you want. So you can see what screens did they open up, what data did they change, what filters did they apply in the user interface. Well, that's useful for audits, but it's also very useful because we can automatically detect patterns in the behavior of the end user. So if an end user is a sales manager and he opens up the screen every Monday morning, and he opens up the customer screen and he changes the sorting order and he filters for region north, I don't know. Then the software will say, hey, how about I automatically open up the screen, change the sorting order for you, and automatically filter the list of customers for region north. And if the sales manager says, okay, please do that, then from that moment on, it's stored in his user profile and his version of the application is now changed, but just for him. So the application is what we call self-learning. If you use this application, the more you use it, it will come up with recommendations. And if you accept them, it will become smarter and more user-friendly the more you use them. It's also why we call it the Intelligent Application Manager, because there's a little bit of machine learning that improves the user-friendliness of all applications. But this is also the UPCYCLER. On the left-hand side, it's the final part of the slide. And UPCYCLER allows customers to derive information from legacy systems. It's a one-step process only, so you only have to do this once in the beginning. For example, you can get all your information from your SAP system, from Access, from Excel, all kinds of legacy technologies. We have over 50 different UPCYCLERs, and we can get this data and put it automatically in a model, and that saves a lot of time. And also on a database level, we can import all the data automatically into Thinkwise. And that doesn't mean the application is perfect after that. That would be great, but it isn't true. So let's just say it saves you 30% of the time. You still have to spend 70% of the time on finishing the model, adding code templates because it doesn't convert any of the code. But then at least you can use a local development environment to make changes and redeploy it whenever you want in the way that you want it. So that was a little bit of a background on the architecture. I see most of you are still here. That's absolutely great. So from an end user perspective, this application looks like a regular business application. They don't know it's model driven. They don't care it's model driven. They don't know what low code is. That's also fine. But the end user, this is a large transportation company. We have several in them, also a few German ones. And they use it to track ships worldwide. So they built a solution with a maps component in it, with the location of their ships, and they can use it to automatically calculate the routes from their ships through different harbors. They take into account the weather conditions, the toll passages, whatever is cheaper. They use Thinkwise platform for that. But also complex screens like scheduling components are all standard available out of the box. You can just use it to schedule your factories, I don't know, holiday homes, or in this case, ships. That's all completely possible. This is basically a limitless local platform. You can just build these components yourself even. And also, for example, dashboarding is all standard part of the platform. So if you want to stand a dashboard for your CRM system, for your order intake, for, I don't know, the service tickets that you still have to handle, that's all configurable in the platform as well. So the UI that we released only a few months ago is a completely next generation user experience. It's a progressive web app. It's completely responsive. It works on Windows web and your mobile device. You don't have to rebuild your solution when you install it. All Thinkwise customers, even those that started with us 14, 15, 16 years ago, are all now working on this new UI, and without doing anything. We just guarantee that it works also for the future. So the future, speaking of the future of low code, there are different perspectives about the future as always. And we have a particular vision on that because, of course, machine learning is a big thing. We have a roadmap with lots of ideas on it. For example, making the application even smarter, making it look better, etc. But I wanted to highlight two things that are quite special. One of them is automated machine learning, and one of them is natural language understanding. These are two things that are either already available in Thinkwise or very soon available in Thinkwise. Apologies. So over the last few years, a lot of the customers that started working with Thinkwise were applying something such as machine learning. They were either using it to forecast, for example, their stock levels. They use it to forecast the sales of next quarter. They use it to predict the hardenability of steel, which is a tough word, but they use it to calculate how hard the steel will be after molding it. They use machine learning for that, neural networks, all these kinds of things. They use it to classify over 1,000 emails with unstructured text in it. And they use it, for example, for these calculating routes of these ships, but also for planning and scheduling problems. This is already possible for many years in Thinkwise. We provide the capabilities to build in these neural networks and AI to power your solutions. But the big problem that we always have is that you need a lot of knowledge of statistics and data science. And that's just simply knowledge that is, not everybody has it, and these people are in very high demand. Everybody wants these data scientists and AI statistics people. So what we saw is that we could incorporate something called automated machine learning with emphasis on automated. And we made it so that every developer, even if you have no knowledge of data science or machine learning, is capable of integrating AI in their Thinkwise solutions. Why is that? Well, the model that contains all this information about the application itself, it contains a lot of information about the data types and how they're related to each other. So if the developer just says what he wants to forecast, for example, or what he wants to classify, then the Thinkwise automated machine learning can automatically select the right algorithms and apply them automatically for the developer, and then use that later on to do the prediction, for example. So you don't need any knowledge anymore of how it works. It just selects the best results machine learning algorithm. And the second thing, and I'm also being cautious of our time, and if there are any questions, just leave them in the Q&A, is natural language understanding, which is of course becoming bigger and bigger, like you know about the bots and assistants. And with virtually all local platforms worldwide, you will have to build these assistants for every solution that you build for your customer, for yourself. But in Thinkwise, we're now building a smart assistant that's available immediately for every single customer. And it will be capable of answering questions. So you can simply start typing, you can start talking to the smart assistant, and you can start asking, for example, what's the address of this customer, what's the active treatment plan of this patient, and it will understand what you mean by looking into the model of the application and coming back with an answer based on the data that you have. But also controlling the application, like saying generate all these sales invoices or change the address. But also on the development platform, you can just talk to the platform and say, well, run all the test cases, and it will understand what you mean. So how does it work? These natural language processing bots, these bots or these assistants as they're often called, they need a lot of sample sentences to start understanding what you mean. And these sample sentences are usually a problem because it's very hard. You need almost an infinite list of these sample sentences in multiple languages, and you need to determine what does every word mean. But in Thinkwise, you can automatically generate these sample sentences in all languages. So if you've built an application on the Thinkwise platform, you can just generate a list of all these sample sentences. And in fact, we do that for our customers already. They don't even know about this. And it can be used to train this natural language understanding model so that when a person talks to the Thinkwise assistant, it will understand what is the entity, what's the action, what's the data, and what should I do, and then process the action. So that means that whatever you've built in the Thinkwise platform, this option becomes immediately available for all existing applications that you've already built. So again, customers that started with Thinkwise 14 years ago, they not only get new UIs, new architecture, all kinds of new possibilities, but also an assistant like a chatbot, like this one, is automatically available because we can pre-train it because it's all model-driven low code. And the next step would be to also integrate assistants. And this is maybe something futuristic and maybe nobody's going to use it, but it's there, it's possible. You don't have to do anything for it. You don't have to build it if you work with Thinkwise, because we build it in here. We have a team of smart people that build it, and all customers just get this as a possibility in the near future. And this literally means that you could sit in your car, talk to Apple CarPlay and say, well, what's the treatment plan of patient Y? And it will talk to our assistant. Our assistant will give the answers back, and you will interact with your software just based on the voice. Same goes for Google Home. Maybe you have these. I have 7 of them in my house. I use them a lot, but also a lot of people think, well, this is great, but this is going to be really far away. That's also fine. It just becomes all available once you're on the local platform. So with that being said, we have a few minutes left for some questions. Considering the fact that I haven't seen many, that's also fine. But if you have any questions, just leave them in the Q&A. On the right-hand side, of course, you haven't seen the product itself, you haven't seen the demo, because it would take too much time because there's a lot of history behind this and I don't know your background. On the right-hand side, you can see that you can try this out by yourself for free. You can get a 6-week free trial. You can go in the platform and build your own models, see how it works. We have all the documentation with benchmark reports if you want to know how to compare this to other local platforms. And those are one of the many ways we could help you more in your search for maybe a local solution or in the modernization of some legacy systems, or if you want to build some new apps, that's completely fine. I hope you can find this through our website. I guess you will get an email asking for a survey. If you have any feedback other than the fact that it should be in German, or you agree with that, we'll just leave it in the survey. That would be great. If there aren't any last questions, we will end this session, and I will thank you a lot. Jens, is there anything you would like to add as a few final words?
Can we hear each other? Yes. Yeah, so, even my
stop the share so that you're on the big screen.
Yeah, kind of a picture of me is there too. Even without me, it doesn't matter. Okay, it's better than before. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm really there. I'm not sleeping or something. Yeah, thanks for your ideas, for your new solutions, for your view in the future, what we can all do with low code and no code. And I can just invite everybody to use the Q&As to ask Mark everything you have in mind right now regarding low code in general, or doing the session and the examples he had provide for us. I mean, we have him never so close again. We are not sure when is the next fair or the next Congress. So we are almost family. We are just around 10 participants right now. So ask whatever I want. For me, interesting would be what a company need to provide to empower his own employees to support their solutions. I mean, comes everything from you, or can I, as a chief of a company, say, okay, here is somebody who is really, really good in, I don't know, in calculation or in air security, something you don't know. It's, let's say, air security. I would empower this person to use your application better. Does it need a lot of time, a lot of money, or is it quite easy to bring in action?
No, well, I don't think any vendor would say it's going to cost a lot of time and money, but just to give you an idea, a normal project team has like 3 to 5 people. You need a project manager normally. You need somebody who's capable of coming up with the business requirements. And you need somebody who can do modeling of screens, and usually someone who can do programming for complex business rules. So if you have this team of 3 or 4 people, then you should be fine. Sometimes you have a very smart person that does all of it. That's also possible, but normally there are at least 2 people that can work together on a solution like this. And does it take a lot of time? Well, a typical e-learning course takes about 2 weeks, and then you can build your first application with over 50 screens in it. So like a CRM system, something like that, in about 3 weeks. So after that, you're not a good Thinkwise developer, but at least you know your way around, you know how to resolve most problems. It's like having a driver's license. So you have your license, but well, you're still not that good of a driver. You need more experience, of course. But normal, if you have a software development background, you should be able to learn this in about 2 months.
Okay, that sounds good. I think everybody can deal with it. Use the time, or in other case, I would say we just think about what we have learned today, and can contact you. Just see on your invitation cards there is. Oh, I have to check my own. It's the email address is yours, isn't it? From the invitation cards.
Yes, I think so. You can always go to thinkwisesoftware.com. We have a German website with German documentation in there as well, so that can probably help you too.
Yeah. Anyway, for all the people who come from the SIBB side, from Veranstaltung at SIBB, I can ask, I can answer most of the questions too, and of course bring it together if you have a specific question about Mark and Thinkwise. So thanks so far. Would love to see you tomorrow again, and of course to the Solution Week too.
Yes, thank you too, and hopefully we'll speak soon.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks everyone. Bye.